Really sorry for keeping adding bits of extra writing, because I know you want to kind of concentrate on doing the work, and I guess it's kind of distracting you away from it. So, I mean, if you just want to, if you just want to carry on writing and you can write things that are going to make this a lot stronger and more compellable, then just carry on writing until you think that it's substantial enough. And like, because I only just found that other paper, so I guess I can just add some more money when I pay for the gig. I can just add it on as a tip. If it's actually, if it takes you a bit longer anyway, I'll probably have some more money by then anyway. I think this is probably more important than the 38 degrees and the YouTube claim, because this is like more of the central founding part of all of it, really. But what I've actually also now just thought after the rest of it, so it's important. I know that in one of the things that you did, you've got to kind of there's got to be some like line to draw somewhere. Where do you draw the line? Where are we going to draw the line? Because you have to draw the line somewhere. Where do we draw the line if we're going to put a line? Well, I think there's some evidence in these acts. To start with, in the statute law, it's illegal to draw arms against the king. Well, it's clearly not illegal to draw it on paper, at least through an official request, or else you won't be able to write it. And to draw pictures, and I mean, I know Putin's made it illegal to make jokes about Putin. Putin's made it illegal to even draw comedy sketches attacking Putin, but obviously there are plenty of comedy sketches attacking the king, on paper at least, in humour. But it clearly, we're talking about, weapons, swords, guns, arms. You see, with the right to petition, and all prosecutions are illegal, you have the concept of a defence in law and the sword of justice of the prosecution. But that is a concept, we are defending ourselves, but from the legal challenge. So it's all in context of legal attack and defence, the right to petition. What it does is it removes all legal consequences for petitioning. So we have to kind of somehow draw the line. Although this is the thing, you've got creative license, I guess now, to make representations. If you film it and if you say it's for that purpose. If you can argue it being an advertisement to promote the cause and a representation, maybe even smashing a window or something like that, to represent, a broken society, and particularly if these banks, are now, we know they're kind of all owned by the same corporations and groups, so they're using their money to lobby the government and get bills laid, using massive amounts of money they've got from us, leaving us with little to no money. And then if we want to publish adverts through their newspapers and magazines, they're all making a profit out of us getting our message in there in their opposition. So it's almost like they win-win-win, So if we don't make use of the law creatively, where it's almost like helping the other side. I would suggest that I strongly believe that, it says that it's illegal to draw arms against the king, right? So, and then if you use that as, you can't attack him, with weapons, swords, you can't attack, with weapons, armed. You see, this is what happened in the White House, with the whole Trump thing and the whole thing, they all went in armed and went in there. But then we've got, in fact, funnily enough, there is a statute law, a really horrible and nasty statute law that I came across when the very first time I typed in a statute law and searched. There was some horrible laws saying that the king may murder any person in the country for whatever reason. There was some laws that they could just kill people, and remember they used to hang people, so some of this was quite serious because they were threatening getting killed through the legal proceedings, killing them, not just making them do community service or paying a fine or even being imprisoned. I mean, they were hanging people at one point, so it was, your life or theirs, So in that context of when it was enacted, it is quite serious because the legal consequences could actually get you killed just by the government, or never mind like the king drawing arms against you or using his law against you, you could end up hanged. So, the thing is, all these insurance companies, all these insurance premiums and massive amounts of money making careers out of these insurance companies, but does it ever get used a lot of the time? They're insured for third-party incidents and accidents. So to me, it's like, if they're covered for the repairs, basically. The majority of these incidents, they're financially covered for repairs to get it fixed. So it's all about, should the people be punished or not? And if they're claiming it's for political actions and they're claiming that it's to promote it and advertise it, then they've got a very strong case for it being covered by it. So I think to draw the line is like, this whole, join arms against the king. And also, I would suggest, like, the IRA, the Irish Republican Army, that is going beyond petitioning because they're arming themselves and they've officially called themselves an army. They've said, we're an army, and you've also got in the right to petition, don't forget, you've got all these laws on having a standing army, we've got the right for people to come together and speak freely and even come together in protest and so forth. There's a distinction between being armed and then regarding it as an army, as an armed force, which, if you look at some of those rights, there were laws and legislations about, whether it's considered an armed force and an army, right? So, and that's, it comes in towards, join arms against the king, even if it's just one person. Although, I think Tony Blair, the Prime Minister, someone citizens arrested him one time. There's apparently 4 or 5 different laws for citizens arrest that you can use, that the citizens can use anyway. There are several citizens arrest laws that we can use. I think I've got a video where a police guy was on GB News only a few weeks ago, and he said all of these laws, like he noted like all the different acts. There were at least 4 or 5 different citizens arrest clauses, or normal police ones, like the one that I said in the Criminal Law Act, where if you are truly investigating something and pursuing crime, they can't intervene in it. And it can be any person, like citizens. Basically, all this is to do with that hue and cry, and before there was a police force, and the public have a right to enforce the laws that govern us, before we paid the police to do it full time. The police have got training and so forth. But then again, I would suggest that the police being trained and it being a career, it's only like, you've got a career lawyer or a career barrister. You can defend yourself in court. You can self-represent. Everyone's got the right to self-represent, even if they don't want a duty solicitor or to pay for one. You've got the right to self-defend. It's almost like you might not be trained in it, but you've got the right to do it, and you can use what legislation exists if you know what the legislation says you can and can't do, which is that, you can pursue criminals. Maybe if you've been charged with something and you've got to defend yourself, then you would use that charge. If you knew the law well, then you're officially charged. It's official that you're engaged in proceedings and you've got to defend yourself. So then you would use these rights to publish, asking for witnesses for your side of the case, or even maybe you might apply to the judge for a warrant if you wanted to really go into somewhere and get some evidence. If the police were opposing you and the police would refuse to act on your behalf because they sided with the prosecution and they were bringing the charge, then there's nothing to stop the defence getting warrants and so forth if there might be evidence. You see, this is all knowing what the word being charged is, because you charge a battery. It is a shock being charged. It is a burden being charged. But at least it's official that you've got proceedings, but you've got to use them for defence. And this is when all the immunities come in for the prosecution, when they get witnesses and they use the Crown Prosecution Service's assisting offenders, when they can take on people on their side. It's not all over when you've been charged. What it does is the court and the police, everyone recognises you can provide documents if anyone stops you that you've got a charge against you and you've got to defend it. So then you things like trespass, being on land, using the Trespass Act, have you got a reasonable excuse to be on this land, or a right, a privilege, or an interest? Well, if you've got to defend yourself, if there was some evidence on that land for your case, and you needed to obtain it or take a photo of it, then you produce the documents that you prove that you have proceedings that are active. You see, this is why when we say, are you petitioning the government or not? Are you bringing a case against the government? Are you collecting evidence, or are you promoting it, advertising it, and so forth? Almost like the police, but in defence, not in attack. But when we petition, we are the ones who are initiating the proceedings, or if we want an inquiry, we are the primary witness with the initial evidence that has to be laid for the inquiry. So I think that if we're going to draw a line, if you want to stretch it to the limits, I would say that this whole all that standing army law, that therefore we've got a distinction between the public gathering and using their voices. They haven't necessarily got swords and armed force. So this is where we get to, if you break a window in a bank and the bank's involved in, oil, and that's what you're opposing, oil developments. If you can argue that is not being armed in public and not join arms against the king and not having a standing army there, if you can pass it off as a publicity stunt, let's call it that. If it passes off as a publicity stunt, and if you are filming it and take photos, you're not trying to hide it or cover it up, you're broadcasting it to the world, or Extinction Rebellion put it on the website or whatever, and it's sending a message. If you can argue that it's a publicity stunt, then I think that you can, you can draw it under the umbrella of that right to petition, rebellious. It said, people doing rebellious things in public. So therefore, I think that if this is the distinction, the Irish Republican Army, the IRA, it's an armed force, they've armed themselves, and they are drawing arms against, the opposition, military and government and so forth. It's gone beyond a publicity stunt or a advertisement or completely speaking freely in public or in private or through advertisements or platforms. This free sending message or speaking opinion, trying information, because they're trying to pull us now on whether it's true or not, but you decide in court whether it's true or not. The advertising company doesn't decide whether it's true or not. You're trying the information. If you want to get the public to sign it, you put your information down, the public read it, and then they go make their own decisions and go research. If they believe you, then they can sign it. And then once you've got all these people saying, we think this is true, then they can debate in Parliament. The thing is, Facebook and YouTube are not a court. Therefore, they are not there to decide what is true or not, judge as a judgment. So therefore, if it's not commercial, business, or just for yourself, if it is right, this is for a petition, then it's proceedings. We know that it's a long-established legal, it's a judicial process. There's no doubt about it. It has been confirmed as a form of judicial process. So you're trying the information, and that's what all cases are about. You try the information, you get the evidence and the statements and fact, and you try it either to the court or to the justices or to the public jury, or to the government chamber for debate. And it's not for any other private company or individual to judge. They can support it or oppose it. And when it comes down to newspapers and Facebook and YouTube, they want to have a video platform that's accessible by the public, that you don't need to have an account to go on there. You can go into a library or anywhere that's got free Wi-Fi, and you can just go on that site without it's not private members only. Anyone on any computer with free internet access in any library can go onto YouTube. So it has a public access side of it. It's not a private club. And it says it'll comply with all the laws. So it's for petitioning and for political matters. It's forfeiting by saying that it will comply with all rights of state and federal and foreign laws. That is a forfeiture of its policy, because by complying and applying all the rights and laws, it's saying that it will comply and abide by the right to petition, which gives us the immunity from intervention. So at least for political material, it's forfeiting its policy on content and material, I believe, but not for commercial or other just entertainment or purpose uses, because there's no right for that. But for political reasons, there is the right that gives you the immunity and the you can't be held to commitment by any other person or party. So it really is forfeiting its policy, I believe. So that's what I feel. I think that the line is already drawn, because they've got all this standing army and keeping and holding a standing army, and they've got join arms against the king, being armed and so forth. So as long as you are not regarded as join arms, and we don't mean join comedy arms, as long as you haven't actually, you're not physically, as far as I know, none of these actions or groups have ever attacked a person, a human, as far as I know. But the thing is now, this is a big twist on it all. From that anonymous video that I put here, if you notice, everything's been bought up now by the companies, and the ownership has all come under these bigger entities, right? Which there's some question as to who owns it. We don't really, Larry Fink is not the owner. He's just the CEO or whatever, the director. He's not the owner of it all. Charles is quoted at the World Economic Forum for saying that they're using a military-style operation that is beyond leaders, when they've got trillions at their disposal. So it doesn't sound good. It kind of sounds like they are using their commercial enterprises as if it were a military endeavour in opposition, and they've got disposable trillions. Could that be recognised as being a standing army? If Charles has said, that they're going to use military-style operations from the corporate private sector with disposable trillions, and if that is the BlackRock Vanguard model, can we recognise their corporate organisation as set out in that anonymous video that I put here? Could we regard that as a standing army in some way? You see, this 77th Brigade, 77th Battalion that were using internet to take down people's material, that's a military force, but the government apparently okayed it. The British and American government authorised it to take down material from the internet. That wasn't necessarily tanks or guns or bombs, but their computer and internet actions were regarded as military operations, So, is that an armed force or not? But they're not using tanks and bombs and guns. So we've got just a strong case against this union of corporate entities, whether or not they can be regarded as a standing army through corporate power that Charles has kind of already declared it, really, that it exists. But I think for certain, they're trying to pass off, they're trying to make out that, they're not actually using a identifiable army against us because it falls under our own military. What they were saying is that our own armed forces couldn't take down our material, but they admit that some of our material was taken down. They can take down, the Americans and other people's. What was happening was the American government were taking down our stuff in England, and our government was taking down the American stuff. And this is all like that Big Brother Watchers investigated this. They actually interviewed one of the 77th Brigade members who was part of the unit. There's all that as well coming out now. Mark Zuckerberg was told by Biden to take certain materials down. I had Petition posts and signatures and tags taken down unlawfully by Facebook, Zuckerberg. That was political campaign intervention, no doubt about it. But Mark Zuckerberg's admitted that now. But what can we do about it? So I tend to. There definitely is some definition in those very acts about standing armies, armed forces, drawing arms against the king. There are all those things. So with Extinction Rebellion and Just Stop Oil, they are definitely doing rebellious actions in public, and that's covered. Rebellious actions in public definitely is covered by that paper by Karen Bowie. So, being rebellious in public, I say that if you can argue that it's for promotional or some kind of publicity stunt to publicise it, then I think that it's all right. Once you start getting into, they're starting to try to say that it's terrorist-style action, but really, that's what the government are using, because the government are using their 77th Brigade and Battalion to take down our political materials, which is illegal, and they've got an organised enterprise. You see, these people, look at Rishi Sunak, owns, he's got investments in Shell, and then he's going to change the legislation, and he's made himself loads of money, which this is like Nancy Pelosi was doing, making money out of Congress decisions and so forth, which it is, and they are fighting a war through their side of all their ownership of their companies and media and their TV shows, and through their cereal box characters and slogans and what slogans they use. It's all being politicised now. And if they're the ones who, they possess all of the money, they've acquired and they possess all of the wealth now. So what have we got? We can't afford these billboard adverts that they're charging the prices for. And they're making money out of us on Facebook and YouTube, even when we do promote. So, if you've got a channel that's free and you can upload videos to advertise and promote your cause, and you're not actually going through paying for the ads, which is on the same website, and the ads get shown within the same videos anyway, that's the only thing that we've got left to do that's not making the opposition money out of us, really. So at the end of the day, what is that right worth? Is that right worth the value of us being able to go into our public arena or wherever we need to go to spread the message however we can, whatever means we've got left? And even if we have got a bit of money between us and we all chip in together, do we want to be handing that money over to the people that we're opposing, and they're making a profit out of them putting our message on, even if they will do it? But, how can they refuse? Because if they do refuse, then there really is a case for that. Well, where are you going to say it? And this is when you're on Facebook, on the open groups, and when you can say what you want. And I strongly believe that in their policy, they clearly state that they will comply with federal and state law. So it's saying that they're acknowledging and applying those rights. So when you're covered by that right, it's got to forfeit and override. These are the overriding objectives. It's got to override the policy of those platforms. It has to. Because they're saying that they will abide and accept the law. So they're forfeiting their policy, at least for things that are covered by the enactment that you're using, like through Class F and E, political materials and elections. And they say that you can't use YouTube or Facebook to intervene in elections anyway. But the only thing is that YouTube themselves are intervening, which, they can't. That's where I am with it now. So I would say that there is some indication in there of these things, like, if it's recognised that you've got like an armed force, and your actions, you join arms against the king, further than on paper or in theory or at least in legal case with, evidence, facts and trying informations. You can try informations against the king, you just can't draw a sword or pistol on him, or get an army of people to draw up arms. So, I think that if you can pass it off as a publicity stunt and not as, an organised military attack, then I think you're covered. It is a bit of a stretch, but it makes sense when you've got to take into account that the civil war itself was one of the main factors leading up to all this being enacted. So that they had like an actual civil war, with soldiers, roundheads, royalists, magistrates and courts taking different sides, juries taking different sides, soldiers raiding the opposition's artwork and stealing things, and then people petitioning the government to claim back for, damages and so forth. Which I guess it's a little bit like insurance, isn't it? I suppose if there is a civil conflict and people are angry about things, and they want do a publicity stunt to promote it, they're insured for it. What's insurance for at the end of the day? There are accidents, but it's third party fire and theft, or it's a third party. Another party has unfortunately decided that your business or property may be involved in the thing that they're opposing, and they might want to use it for an opportunity for a publicity stunt. So, there are some lines that you can draw at it, I think, in those acts, like these standing armies and so forth and join arms against the king. There's definitely something to work with, when it comes to the IRA, because, the IRA are recognised as a military force. They don't pretend not to be. So there are some sort of, you can start to formulate some lines, and when you consider the fact of how much money these entities now have compared to the working people, and the working people's only means of opposition, maybe even to actually give over money and fund some of these corporate entities, what is the right worth at the end of the day? Well, it's worth immunity from being prosecuted. It's worth at least protection from legal consequences if it's officially recognised that you are declared and engaged in these judicial process, which is almost like, the opposite of being charged, because when you've been charged, that's, it's officially recognised that you've got proceedings, and you can use you use that charge to, really a clever person would use that charge to means of special rights to do things that they might be able to do to win their defence, like I said earlier, even, you access land, get evidence, publish things, and so forth. If they want to defend themselves, although it'd be difficult to do that, if you in detention, if it's like a really serious crime, if you haven't got bail, this is the thing, have you got bail? Do you apply for bail? Why? Because you might need to collect some evidence or whatever. This is it. And then, there is a law in those rights that we covered. If you look at it, it says that, you can't be held without a fair trial and so forth, which is what they've been doing to Assange. What happens if Assange has got evidence in his defence and he wants to self-represent and he wants to, publish things or go get evidence or do whatever in his defence? He's been held without a trial. Now, they do that for terrorists mainly, but this is the thing, terrorists, does that class as standing army and armed forces and so forth. All Assange did was get information, and he was trying that information to disclose the government. He wasn't armed. And at the end of the day, if using a computer is regarded as terrorism, if Assange is a terrorist, like what Trudeau was saying about those truckers, then we've got a case against 77th Brigade or 77th Battalion for using the computers as part of the army against its own people, because that's, the armed forces committing treason against the people. At the end of the day, is it our army? Or is someone else in charge of these corporate entities and all the computer companies are being utilised as some sort of force that is armed with computers that could be identified against, that's not actually, that's separate from the British Army, because they provided the army with some of those computers. That's why Charles is in a hell of a lot of trouble at the moment with the World Economic Forum by saying that, he openly admitting that he's approaching the global situation with a military-style operation from the corporate sector that's beyond leaders with trillions at his disposal. It is Charles using a military force that is beyond our army. If he's beyond leaders, then is military-style action beyond the armed forces? That's where I am with it. And this is, we're getting into Robert F. Kennedy opposing this industrial military complex now. That's essentially it. That's where we are with it. Is Charles, has he amounted a private corporate army? And does this private corporate army surmise of Sunak's investments in oil companies and so forth? Are they in command of forces that are separate to our armed forces, or have even provided our armed forces with computers? And have they taken down our online activity unlawfully? That's where we are with it. And if they have, what financial capacity do we have against them when they've got disposable trillions? Very little. And anything that we could publish or promote is helping their side by funding them. So, at the end of the day, what's a tank worth when they're sending tanks over to, another country will not do as it's told. These other countries won't obey what, our countries want them to do. So we're sending £150 million tanks over because they won't do as we say. Now, what is the right worth? Is the right worth £150 million tank armour? Does it protect us from our government when we don't want to do what it says? Lawfully oppose it with information and promoting that, given the facts and circumstances of we're not on an equal footing with these forces. So how could we possibly, in court, these entities are suing our governments because our governments might affect their future profits. But yet these companies are supplying food that is harming our health and, reducing sperm counts and all the rest of it, making people overweight and causing a lot of, illnesses because of, the wrong types of foods. I don't really want to get political, but I'm just trying to, what are these rights for? And what changes are there since back then? What is the opposition? How can you define and identify what we are opposing? And it seems that it's a very, very large group of unified, massive organisations that have pretty much taken ownership of literally everything. And it's hard to oppose them without somehow helping them, giving money over to them, you know?